12.3 measures of dispersion. There are two measures of dispersion that we primarily use, the range and the standard deviation. In this video, we'll define the range, and in a second video, we'll talk about calculating the standard deviation. Well, first of all, we have test scores 30, 40, 45, 50, 70, 90, 90. The range is simply the highest minus the lowest. High minus low. In this case, 90 minus 30, which is 60. That tells you how far it is from the lowest to the highest, gives you an idea of how spread out a set of scores are. One limitation of this is this only takes into account 30 and 90. So for instance, this could be, we could have a bunch of 30s and a bunch of 90s, and then the range of 60, or we could have a 30 and a 90 and a bunch of scores clustered at 50, and you still have a range of 60. So this doesn't tell the whole picture. Standard deviation we'll talk about in the next video takes into account the dispersion of every single score. It's also very useful for a normal distribution. Now, we have a second concept here. Suppose we have scores of 50, 60, 60, 80, 80, 90. The mean of this set, add up all the scores, divide by 6. 420 over 6 is 70. 70 is right in the middle. The deviation from the mean is how far these scores differ from the mean. 50 minus 70 is negative 20. See, 50 is 20 below 70. 60 minus 70 is negative 10. This one is negative 10 as well. 80 minus 70 is 10. Notice it's plus 10. This is 10 above the mean. Yeah, this is going to be 10, and this is going to be 20. Now, if you add up the sum of the deviations, negative 20 minus 10 minus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 20 adds up to be 0. This is equal the sum of deviations from the mean. That always adds up to 0. That's a good check. And there's several questions in the homework where they ask you to find the sum of the deviations, and of course you can just put down 0, but that checks to make sure this work is all done properly. So if you add it up and don't get 0, you can go back and check your work and find the mistake. So adding up the deviations could give you an idea of how spread out things are, but you always get 0, so that doesn't tell you anything either. So we have a different way of figuring out the aggregate of how far spread out these scores are. These numbers themselves give you an idea. Negative 20, negative 10, negative 10, 10, 10, 20 is a picture that gives you an idea of how spread out the scores are, but adding them up just doesn't do it for you. So that's all for this video. We'll be back with standard deviation shortly.